This is called, here we go.
That's destroying the
Poland
environment.
Springs water.
Get rid of all the, I'm so
Marco
anti-plastic,
Rubio
I can't even
I'm telling you, it's good.
No, get rid of all plastic. We're getting all plastic gone from our staff. We don't want any plastic.
What do you think this is, vodka? What?
Well, you need to get rid of the plastic, and you need to have a paper cup because we're destroying the oceans, and the sharks and the whales and everything are dying.
As you can see, I don't get dressed up. This thing around my neck, which I despise, I'm going to rip off in about 5 seconds. Have a great show.
All right.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay, I don't know what that was, but good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle. You're looking at a live shot of the White House as President Trump concludes his first state dinner. We're expecting the departure of the French president, Macron, and his wife at any moment. So much for the myth that Trump's America First policy means isolating from entertaining and diplomacy. And the president is now the leader on the world stage that we knew he would be. The French president departs tonight, and German Chancellor Angela Merkel arrives on Friday. And a potentially historic meeting between Trump and Kim Jong-un over North Korea's nukes is imminent. So how different reality is from what the so-called experts predicted not so long ago?
This administration may be just a series of flip-flops and waverings on foreign policy for 4 years. That would put a lot of Americans and a lot of people across the globe in great jeopardy.
We've stepped away to global leadership, and we're, in fact, not only have we stepped away, but we're kind of gotten shoved off the stage.
This man poses to the safety and the security of the United States of America.
On the world stage, this president is humiliating America. No question.
The United States has built up its credibility and political capital over the last century. The Trump administration is raiding that trust fund.
I think I just went into REM cycle. Totally deep sleep. Look, there's still time to revise and extend all of your comments, ladies and gentlemen. For more on tonight's state dinner, let's go to Fox News chief national correspondent Ed Henry, live at the White House. Ed, give us the scene. We want to know what it's like there. I'm jealous I'm not there. Looks fun.
Well, it's interesting, Laura, because it was more intimate than other state dinners we've seen. Basically about 13 or so tables of 10, candle lit. They tried to make it intimate. And also the toast just wrapped up a few moments ago. And President Trump, contrary to what critics have been saying, was very direct in saying, look, we're going to build on this friendship, that God needs to bless this alliance, he said, because we're going to do great things together. And in fact, there's already some suggestions that this relationship is bearing fruit. Earlier today, the French president, along with President Trump, talking a lot about Iran and, in fact, making some progress on that. Remember, the president has been talking about pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal brokered by Barack Obama. The Iranian foreign minister over the weekend had threatened that if that happens, Iran is going to speed up its nuclear activities. Well, today what we saw was a bit of a compromise. President Trump talking tough on Iran, warning them that they will face severe consequences like they've never seen before if they keep up this tough talk, if they restart their nuclear program. What the French president tried to do in a sign of this emerging friendship, he said, look, instead of just pulling out of the deal, let's try to find another way. Let's reshape this nuclear deal to address some of President Trump's concerns. So contrary to the idea that he's acting unilaterally, in fact, they seem to be coming together on this important issue of Iran. Listen to the toast from President Macron tonight.
We will work together, and we have this ability to listen to one another. This is the reason why our relationship will serve our strong history, and we are also aware of the challenges ahead of us, but we will keep working together.
Now, the French president went on to say that, remember, it was the British, not the French, who burned down the White House. And he said, look, it was President Monroe who decided to buy French furniture to sort of spruce up the place. It's kind of an interesting joke, but it seemed to fall flat in the room, Laura. People maybe thought maybe that's not such a great way to break the ice. But the bottom line is they're trying to come together, and it's a lot different than what a lot of critics predicted, Laura.
Ed, thanks so much. And by the way, the last couple of days, we've seen this real bromance develop between the president and his French counterpart. And we put together a fun little collection from Washington's newest odd couple.
very special relationship. In fact, I'll get that little piece of dandruff off. Little piece. We have to make him perfect. He is perfect.
And that means Trump is Felix, correct? And
yeah, I guess so. He's trying to tidy things up, but gosh, Laura, if we're ever on set, I hope that you won't wipe dandruff off and make a big deal out of it. I have that problem sometimes, and I don't want, we're friends, I don't want you to do that.
No, well, you know, I got a black thing. We gotta be careful. I'm sorry, but I think the two of them together are hilarious. I love it. I think it's great. It's very unexpected.
And different than Angela Merkel as well, because it's pretty frosty with her.
Well, we'll see. Who knows what might happen with Angela after this event? You know, you just don't know what will happen. Ed, thanks so much.
Good to see you.
And now for tonight's angle. The Trump administration takes the caravan to court. Well, no doubt you've heard about the caravan of illegal immigrants moving north through Mexico. Well, according to the New York Times, over 100 have already made it to the U.S. border. The caravan started out with more than 1,000 people and is now down to about 500 or so. Now, some of these migrants have told reporters that they plan to find ways to get across the U.S. border. Now, most of them are from Honduras, so many are expected to apply for asylum, supposedly to escape violence at home. Well, anticipating that, the Trump administration is sending additional ICE attorneys, Justice Department judges, and also prosecutors to make sure the caravan asylum cases will be, quote, adjudicated promptly. But we've also learned, this is curious, that American attorneys have traveled southward to meet with migrants to instruct them on their rights to apply for asylum here in the United States. We did some digging, and according to reports, two of these lawyers are Allegra Love of Santa Fe Dreamers Project and Marie Vincent, who also works for a small 501c3 organization. Vincent has said that many of the migrants are strong candidates for asylum because they're fleeing political persecution or violent gangs or threats over their gender or sexual orientation. But for asylum eligibility, according to Section 1208 of the Title 8 Code of Federal Regs, attorneys have to establish that their client has, quote, reasonable fear of persecution. And that is what Democrats and the media have been claiming, that these are political refugees escaping violence and, yes, persecution.
It's really more of anything a symbolic kind of PR move by the migrants who want to talk about and want to bring light to the lack of rule of law and the human rights violations that occur in Central America.
Every time the president gets in a political jam, anytime he's feeling threatened politically, he goes back to a few of the same things. Beating up on immigrants, Mexicans are criminals.
The picture President Trump paints is hordes of immigrants, many of them criminals, poised to storm the border. But the caravan, CNN found, is a very different scenario. We will take you live to meet the families, many women and children, waiting for their next move.
Well, their next move is to crash into our country. Well, the problem for the attorneys helping the members of the caravan could be the U.S. law, the code, Section 1324, of Title 8, which makes it an offense for any person who encourages or induces an alien to come to, enter, or reside in the United States, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that such coming to, entry, or residence is or will be in violation of law. So the question is, when does advocacy for illegals end up crossing the line to committing a 1324 offense? Interesting legal question. Well, because of the attorney-client privilege, this could be tough to determine. But if these attorneys are holding what is being described as these large group seminars and demonstrate intent to skirt the laws or to help the migrants skirt the laws, well, they could be in jeopardy, at least technically. Here's the other problem for these lawyers. Most of the people in this caravan, as I said, are from Honduras. Well, a poll conducted by a Jesuit research group found a whopping 83% of Hondurans who are considering migrating to the United States were motivated by purely economic reasons. In other words, they simply wanted to move to a wealthier country with better economic opportunities. Only 11% said they wanted to leave due to violence and insecurity. So given that poll, immigration judges have to be really skeptical about these asylum claims. And if these claims, a lot of them are bogus, as I assume most of them are, well, what does that say about the attorneys themselves? Michael Cohen, Trump's personal attorney, remember he was called a fixer? Well, what would you call members of the American bar who arguably connive with their clients to thwart or get around U.S. immigration law, or at least game it? And how do many of these migrants know exactly what to say to asylum judges? Well, it's almost like when you hear this, they're almost working off of the same script. How would they all know to say the same thing? Well, the president is doing the right thing. He's heading the caravan off at the pass. This is what he tweeted yesterday. He said, I've instructed the Secretary of Homeland Security not to let these large caravans of people into our country. And another tweet wrote, Mexico, whose laws on immigration are very tough, must stop people from going through Mexico and into the United States. We may make this a condition of the new NAFTA agreement. Well, the plan is to detain any asylum seekers until their hearings. The others will be prosecuted for illegal entry, and I say good. Catch and release does not work. The Trump administration said they were ending it. It must be ended now. There can be no more catch and promise you'll show up for your asylum hearing, because as we know, and we've discussed this many times on The Angle, the vast majority of those asylum seekers never show up at their hearing. They just disappear into society. Trump is right to partner with Mexico to stop the flood of immigrants pouring through Mexico's southern border. Tying results to trade, I mean, it might be the only thing we can do. It might be a really good idea. And building the wall, my goodness, if you can't see that building the wall is more necessary than ever now, you must be blind. The president should also put Honduras on notice that this virtual invasion has to stop. It's not virtual, it's a real invasion. Even if that means things don't change, threatening to suspend foreign aid, which Honduras desperately needs. It would also help if we got our own house in order and stopped the abuse of asylum and the process of applying and facilitating it by American lawyers. More has to be done there. So-called asylum seekers all get their day in court. But for the American citizen, security and justice always seems delayed. And that's The Angle. Joining us now for reaction here in studio is Art Arthur with the Center for Immigration Studies and immigration attorney Alan Orr. All right, gentlemen, great to have you on. This is a big deal, I think, because we've now seen large groups of people, not just one group, but several groups, over the last 4 or 5 months begin to move north from through Mexico all the way to the U.S. border. This latest group is due to arrive any day now. What is the immigration system in our country supposed to do when we have masses of humanity rushing the border and having their actions facilitated in part by U.S. lawyers? Now, Alan, you're a immigration attorney. They're flying down there, at least the two that we've been able to identify, and apparently they're representing hundreds of people. How can you represent hundreds of clients? You don't know who they are. You don't know what their intentions are.
Well, I don't think they're actually representing. They might be having clinics to sort of inform people of what the right state of the United States is. And I really don't think it's that big of a problem, because USC.gov also tells immigrants all the time exactly what their rights are to file the asylum claim. So it's just one of the things that they're doing as a humanitarian issue. It's sort of a Good Samaritan type thing to go to these people who are in need from their home countries to sort of inform them of, if they're coming to the United States, this is what you will need to do and what you will encounter at the port of entry.
Art, here's the reasons to seek asylum. You're a former immigration judge, you know this. Persecution, you have to have credible fear of persecution due to race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. Explain that, because it looks like a lot of these Hondurans especially are coming here because of economic concerns. They want a better life. I mean, a lot of people in Africa want to come here, they have a lot of better life, but they can't come through Mexico. They have to go in a boat and get there. But it's an economic concern masquerading as a asylum claim, credible fear of persecution, often for political or criminal or so forth?
Four of these grounds for asylum are very easy: race, religion, nationality, and political opinion. Membership in a particular social group is wide open, however. It can be anything. It can be, based on gender identity. It can be based on, I was harmed because of my familial relationship. And for that reason, most of these people come in claiming that they've been harmed by the gangs. And so the judges, the asylum officers have to figure out whether there's a cognizable claim based on membership in a particular social group, given the claim that they have. And that's really where we get all these people.
So right now we have 311,000 asylum claims backlogged in the United States as of January, 311,000. So DHS has said, this is a crisis point. We got to really winnow down the fraud, which is a lot of fraud here. And we got to do something about this because we don't have the manpower, we don't have the money, we don't have the judges, we don't have the prosecutors, we don't have the system to do this. So Alan, everyone wants to be a humanitarian. We give a lot of money to other countries. Millions of people around the world want to come here because they're being persecuted. I mean, a lot of people in the United States feel persecuted, of minority groups, different sexual orientation groups. But people all over the world believe they have a credible fear of persecution. Conceivably, they could all apply for asylum, correct?
That's correct. And under the current laws, there's not an issue with that. There's no sort of bell curve on humanity, right? So if someone they meet the requirements of the law.
What about the humanity of the American people, the American taxpayer, the American school child in an overcrowded classroom? Do they have any rights here?
I think they all have rights, and that's not necessarily the fault of the immigrants, right? That's sort of the process, and that's sort of the reason for the backlog in the court systems. You have to look broader than those issues for the school. That's something about where Congress wants to spend money. If they're spending more money on the military,
Americans. They want to spend money on Americans because they're suffering too.
Well, I think they're also spending money on American by making sure that our borders represent and help have a nice situation. I mean, we drop bombs in Syria.
Wait. Our borders should have a nice situation.
No. They want to make sure that America has a nice situation. Our country is built on a country of immigrants in which we have been humanitarians
not illegal
across
immigrants.
the world. Well, they're not illegal because they're not here. So if they're not in the United States, they're not illegal.
But there are a lot of these immigrants who, in New York Times and AP reports, is that many of them say they're going to get here. Not like, they're all going to stay outside the border and they're going to be dutifully processed. No, a lot of them say, we're getting here by hook or by crook. And the sense is they have a right to be here. It's not just, help. It's we have a right to be here. And Mexico deserves some of the blame here. Because Mexico, instead of deporting them from Mexico or keeping them, they are giving them these temporary visas to travel from southern Mexico up to the border. Trump is about up to here with Mexico on this.
Absolutely critical point, because quite frankly, Mexico needs to defend its southern border in order to stop these individuals from coming to the United States. In addition, Mexico is an asylum granting country itself. And if these individuals are in fear for their lives, as Alan indicates, quite frankly, they can apply for asylum in Mexico. The fact that they continue on to the United States indicates that perhaps they might have economic reasons.
We forum shop and in the law, they're country shopping. And right now, America is better than Mexico, I guess, for asylum seekers. Guys, great segment, as always. And Candace Owens is winning a lot of fresh praise from Kanye West, sparking a new, liberal meltdown. And the conservative commentator joins us next with her reaction. My next guest has sparked a national debate on the conventional wisdom about African Americans in politics. Well, Candace Owens has urged black voters to think independently for themselves and to question liberal orthodoxy. She has been mercilessly attacked online, but coming to her defense, very interestingly, has been hip-hop star Kanye West. Well, he tweeted on Saturday, "I love the way Candace Owens thinks." Is he punking all of us? What's going on with that? As we shared with you last night, a hip-hop radio host also claims that West told him that he loves President Trump and he likes Owens because she's challenging conventional black thought. Joining me now to respond to the controversy is Candace Owens herself. Hey, Candace, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Well, you just go to a college campus and you start talking about think for yourself and be your own person and gosh, that's kind of a Me Too thing. Like, stand up for yourself. Don't be a victim. I was listening to you. I didn't see who it was, and I thought, it's like a Me Too thing. And then I saw, it's Candace Owens. Wait a second. Why is this so controversial? Were you surprised that this became such a big deal? Like, obviously, Kanye weighs in, but were you surprised?
I actually wasn't surprised at all. This is what I've been talking about across college campuses with Turning Point USA, is that there is this liberal indoctrination, and they think that they have a monopoly, not just on our students, which is what we deal with at Turning Point USA, but also on the entire black race in America. They cannot fathom that we might have different ideas. They don't understand because they have significantly created a mental prison for all of us. And the second somebody runs off what I refer to as a Democratic plantation, they send the dogs out.
Well, there was an interesting moment on this radio show, this guy Ebro, who's a very interesting host, and he was talking about Kanye West, and he was saying, well, Kanye's not thinking independently because he lives himself in a bubble. Let's watch.
Kanye is talking about things that don't affect him.
They do not. Let's be honest. None of these things affect him. He lives in a bubble where it's like none of us could really understand. All he's surrounded by is the Kardashians and a bunch of yes men and the fashion world and this. He doesn't understand what's happening in the streets, what's happening when it comes to protests, none of that.
Oh, wait a second. As if there aren't multi-millionaire African Americans, Latinos, and others living in Bel Air, Brentwood, Malibu. I mean, because you don't live on the streets, then you can't comment on anything? What? That was odd, bringing in the Kardashians. What was going on with that comment?
It just wasn't a very smart comment is what it comes down to. It was a fallacious argument that could be attacked 1,000 different ways. I mean, to suggest that because somebody has money, they can't think or they don't have any knowledge or facts or data makes entirely no sense. In fact, you could argue that they may have more access to those things. So I thought that was just incredibly just low IQ is what it really comes down to. And at the end of the day, these radio hosts are not the great philosophers of our time. They do what they do. They get on there and they try to stir up the controversy. They talk about the story of the day, and they're incapable of thinking critically.
Well, I'm a radio host, and I talk about the subjects of the day as well, but I try to do it with some degree of knowledge and experience. Candace, where are you going next?
You know, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep punching back. I have zero fear when it comes to this because I knew exactly that this was going to be the blowback. I know that you recently had some experience with this. You understand mob mentality. And the result is it usually has adverse results. That's exactly what we see with your show and why it's been so spectacular. And I'm hoping we're going to see the exact same thing in the black community. You create a conflict, and at the end of the day, it ends up waking up more people to an underlying problem, which is the fact that we don't have enough diversity of thought within the black community.
All right. Thanks so much, Candace. And I'm sure you'd agree with many critics who say that liberals have encouraged blacks to embrace, at times, a cult of victimhood. An example today might be an editorial in today's LA Times headlined, "Black people were lulled into thinking Starbucks was a safe space. We were wrong." The writer spoke of, quote, "the jarring reality that for black people, especially men, there is no such thing as that kind of neutral space. At least it's not guaranteed." Joining us now to discuss whether that's true are John James, Republican candidate for Senate in Michigan, and Wendy Acefo, a Democratic strategist and Johns Hopkins University professor. All right, Wendy, your reaction to what Candace is arguing about intellectual diversity and the need to just encourage diversity of thought.
It's okay to be intellectually diverse, and we should welcome that. However, let's not be dubious in our narrative, and that's what's going on. What is a fact, and what we all know, is this is not about black victimhood. This is about the fact that our criminal justice system is flawed when it comes to black and brown people. Black people only make up 13% of the American population, but they make up 30% of those individuals who are killed by cops, and 45% of black people have said that they've been unjustly harassed by police officers. This is not about Starbucks. This is not about the issue that happened at Waffle House. This is not about the women who belong to a country club, black women who were kicked off of the country club for playing golf too slowly. This is about our criminal justice system being inherently flawed. This is not an opinion. This is a fact.
John.
So as a black man in this country, I understand that one of the most challenging positions is not only to be a black man, but a conservative black man. And as Candace is saying, too many people have died for our right to be able to think for ourselves. And to not take on this great responsibility is a failure. I truly believe that if we were talking about Chick-fil-A here and not Starbucks, the most dangerous place in America to be would be between Chuck Schumer and a camera. As long as we're talking about statistics here, we talk about the minority of bad cops who are responsible for perpetrating these crimes against African American males and anybody across the country. It's a very vast minority of folks when you consider the good cops out there doing great things for our country, keeping us right now, right here, safe every single day.
But when we talk about cops, let's be clear. My brother serves the NYPD. I know about cops. My grandfather is a retired police officer, so we don't have to educate me about cops. But what we do know is that cops disproportionately attack black and brown people. Again, that's not an opinion. Okay. That is a fact. And let's just use this one example. Yeah. Well, let's use this one example. We know that the killer who killed 4 black and brown people in a Waffle House was, taken, and it was okay. He was fine. Dylan Roof killed people in a church, and he was treated to a Happy Meal from McDonald's before he went to prison. But why is it that when black and brown people, that is a fact. That is a fact. But why is it that why black and brown people, when they are selling loosies or when they are out in the streets, they're not apprehended in the way in which white people are? Those are the facts.
So
here.
Wendy, you're getting off track. Our segment is devoted to whether African American, right? But yeah, well, that's what he spoke about. I celebrate all police. I mean, they're bad. They're bad people in my business. They're bad cops. We all get that.
I didn't bring up the NYPD.
We
I
all
brought
get
up
that.
the minority of cops who are perpetrating these.
Yeah. So I mean, I think
you're talking about the.
Yeah, and I think what happens is that we encourage hostility on both sides. We have incredible police officers doing really difficult jobs, as your family does, day after day after day. And I think we have to be careful with our language. We have to be careful with how we paint with a broad brush. Otherwise, kids of all backgrounds are going to feel like, I'm afraid. Like, I don't even want to report a crime. I don't even want to see a police officer. I don't even want to help from a police officer because they're not fair or they're inherently biased. But getting back to the point of Candace for a moment. She goes to a college campus and she talks about thinking for yourself. Just because you grow up black doesn't mean you automatically register D for Democrat. That's her point. And I've seen time and again that black conservatives or Latinos or even Asians, they're treated like they're second-class citizens within their own communities. And they're looked at like, what's wrong with you? You're an Uncle Tom. You're this. You're an Uncle Thomasina, I've heard. That also, I think, is toxic. Let people debate the issues. Let people have different points of view. Don't demonize them. They might disagree. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're right. Maybe sometimes I'm wrong. You're right. That's fine. But I just feel like there's no monolith here. You know what I'm saying, Wendy?
I agree. I agree that there is not a monolith. And I don't believe that people challenge Candace when she said it's okay to think differently. Absolutely. We are not monolithic. Black people are not. We all do not think the same. However, where the challenge came in was when she talked about the flawed rhetoric that Black Lives Matter has no ground to stand on. When she said, you guys are talking about slavery, but none of you guys experienced that, so why are you even bringing that up? On your show here today, I am challenging Candace to a conversation, to a debate about what does she mean by that comment. Is she
I'm
saying,
sure she'd love to debate
I would love to debate her.
Yeah,
because I don't understand what she means by the comment that just because we did not experience slavery, that we have no right to say, oh, issues of slavery are still impacting the black community. That's inherently flawed.
That's fine. That's her point of view.
So
I mean,
there are those who would say that we're still experiencing slavery, but not slavery of the wrists and the ankles, but slavery of the mind, when we're continually being told that if you think a certain way, that I'm not black enough because I have different thoughts. And so I think what we're talking about here is mob mentality is a bigger threat to our democracy than any foreign country. And we need to make sure that we're broadening our minds.
All right, guys, fantastic conversation. And I have a question. Did the Obama administration step in to squash a probe of the Clinton Foundation? Well, there are new questions now being raised tonight, and we have these stunning details next. Stay there.
Hi, I'm Johnny Bench. After a Hall of Fame career, it's no wonder why I use Blue Emu Arthritis.
Justice Department pressured the FBI to drop an investigation of the Clinton Foundation during the heat of the 2016 presidential campaign. The Inspector General recently submitted a criminal referral against the fired FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe for lying to federal investigators. But buried in that report is McCabe's description of a crucial phone call in August of 2016. Now, that's when McCabe claimed that he pushed back hard against someone in Obama's DOJ who seemed to be pressuring the FBI to quash a probe into the Clinton Foundation. Let's discuss the stunning details with former FBI undercover agent James Weddick in Sacramento, California, who handled, I think you handled the corruption, you were head of the corruption task force in Sacramento, I believe, if I got that right. Let's talk about where we are here on this case. I had you on radio this morning, and you were so great, I had to invite you on TV. Is this normal for an FBI principal associate deputy to call up the FBI and say, kind of slow walk this or to this investigation of the Clinton Foundation, if this is how it went down?
Thanks, Laura. Yes, I ran the corruption squad here in Sacramento for a number of years. It's the state's capital city, the most populous, largest state of the nation. I conducted numerous investigations involving suspect corrupt officials, many high-level officials, and I can tell you, that conversation that Matthew Axelrod had with Deputy Director McCabe, asking him to stand down, if you will, the agents working the Clinton investigation, was improper. You know, I do not agree or support with many things McCabe did, but his pushback there to Justice Department officials, telling them they were, you know, influencing or attempting to influence an investigation was improper, you know, I agree with. And unfortunately, it was his disclosure of that conversation that, of course, has caused him problems, and now the OIG has made a criminal referral to the Justice Department.
Well, shouldn't Matthew Axelrod, if he hasn't already, I might have missed his testimony, but shouldn't he be called to testify on Capitol Hill about this, if that's actually how it went down?
Sure. I don't doubt that there are a number of officials. I don't believe Axelrod made that telephone call on his own. I don't doubt that he didn't discuss the matter with Sally Yates. I don't doubt that there are emails and other text communications surrounding the call, because let me just say this. I worked 35 years and ran the corruption squad for a number of those years. Nobody has made a phone call to me attempting to get us to influence an investigation that was already opened, predicated, and had much, you know, was valid, if you will.
Well, presumably for political reasons. This is in the heat of the campaign. This is in August of 2016. Hillary at that point looked like she was probably cruising to victory. You don't want this Clinton Foundation. I mean, I'm just speculating. This thing stinks to high heaven, unless this is something that McCabe is also making up. I mean, he was lying about other things. Maybe he could have been lying about this, but it didn't seem so. James, thank you so much with your wealth of experience, 35 years with the FBI. And meanwhile, we may finally get some answers on whether political bias affected decisions and investigations at the FBI and the DOJ, including maybe even this. Well, Congressman Bob Goodlatte and Trey Gowdy announced that they've made a deal. This is like North Korean deal. And the Department of Justice will turn over documents their committees have requested, finally. Let's get the details firsthand from the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Bob Goodlatte, who joins us in the studio. Mr. Chairman, good to see you. So this is the threat of subpoena. This is the result of a threat of subpoena and perhaps contempt of Congress. Is this not?
Absolutely. We saw the same effect with the Comey memos last week. Now the department is working with us and the FBI, by the way, too. Make some changes at the top and bring to bear the forces that be and follow the truth wherever it leads, and I think it's going to lead to some interesting places.
So could you actually find some of these documents we were just referring to, perhaps, if this Matthew Axelrod was advised by someone else to call over to McCabe and say, we don't want any more problems with this investigation?
Well, absolutely. I mean, our understanding with the Justice Department includes looking at documents that their search terms yield documents, but we'll also be able to say we want to use our search terms to find email communications and other documents related to that very matter, because that goes right to the core of our investigation and how the FBI handled all the matters related to former Secretary Clinton during 2016 and on into 2017.
This was a quote from Brad Schultzman, who was referencing whether Sally Yates could have been the person who was at one point, later on, acting Attorney General, but they're pointing to her on this. In my experience, these calls are rarely made in a vacuum. The notion that the principal deputy would have made such a decision and issued a directive without the knowledge and consent of the deputy attorney general, which he was at the time, is highly unlikely. He was counsel to the principal associate deputy during the Bush administration. Sally Yates' name. She ceremoniously quit, remember, in the beginning of the administration. Does this sound plausible?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's good insight. And that'll also be part of what we'll have the opportunity to examine related to documents for our investigation. So the department is now setting up a room at Justice where we will be able to send our investigators down there and see the documents.
How many documents?
Up to 1.2 million. Not all of those, it's important to understand, not all those 1.2 million documents are relevant to our investigation. That is what was given to the Inspector General. Yeah. And of course, we're very interested in his report as well, but we have our own entitlement and our own investigation to look at those documents. They'll start producing documents. We will then have the opportunity to see them unredacted and then get possession of them, the ones that are most material to our investigation.
All right, we did this big segment, my angle on these caravans coming toward, why do we call it caravans? It's like a circus, caravan. It's a fun thing. Coming toward the U.S. border, running to rush the border, clearly overwhelm the system. You actually are proposing legislation that would deal with some of these loopholes in this asylum process, which is rife with problems. Congressman, we've got to deal with this.
Absolutely. The Securing America's Futures Act, which you said great things about before, we've been working to build up the support for this. This is a good illustration. What's coming toward our border right now is exactly why we need that legislation, because it addresses it in several ways. First of all, it gives the ability of the administration to return people safely to their homes without having to keep them here for a long period of time. And for asylum applications, which are being grossly abused, more than 300,000.
This is a joke. 311,000 outstanding asylum applications. Most of them never come out for their hearings, and they just go and they live in the United States, and they're seeking asylum. They just want a better life with better economic situation.
Asylum is a good and appropriate consideration. Alexander Solzhenitsyn came here on political asylum. 5,000 a year, most years. Now 300,000. It's fraud, it's abuse, and our bill fixes it.
Is this going to have any traction? I mean, the president going to help support this?
The president strongly supports it, and we need to bring the
Republicans better start doing stuff like this. I mean, you're doing it. You guys are like carrying the load for all these other Republicans. I'm sorry, but the Republicans need to support the president's agenda. You're doing it. We got to get this wall built. That's
also in this bill?
Well, you authorize it, but we got no money for it, correct, in the bill?
Well, that's right. We're an authorizing committee, we're not appropriators. Okay. But that can be part of a final deal.
All
Absolutely.
Right. Congressman, thank you for coming in tonight. We really appreciate your work on this. It's essential that we deal with these loopholes and finally fix this. And coming up, Melania Trump scores a huge triumph over the media and her critics. We'll explain right after this.
Why is Old Dominion #1 in customer satisfaction? Maybe it's OD's over.
President Trump pulled off a diplomatic coup in the last few days, playing host to French President Emmanuel Macron. But First Lady Melania Trump has engineered her own diplomatic triumphs recently. First, as a dignified White House representative at the Barbara Bush funeral this weekend, and then over the last 2 days as the flawless hostess of the French First Family, including at tonight's state dinner. Well, maybe Melania will finally get some of those magazine covers that featured Michelle Obama so prominently and frequently, but I won't hold my breath. To discuss all of this, we're joined by Fox News contributor Rachel Campos-Duffy, along with the publisher of Catalina Magazine, Kathy Aru. Great to see both of you. Let's start with you, Rachel. Melania has had to endure Jimmy Kimmel mocking her accent. I know he apologized. That's fine. But, she's not gotten the cover of Vogue 5 times in the first year like Michelle. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
And she's been scrutinized in every was she's holding her husband's hand or not, or it's endless. And yet tonight we see a beautiful dinner that she did not hire an event planner for. She did it all herself. All the designs, all the selections. No Desiree Rogers there helping her, I guess.
No, I mean, remember, she was a socialite, and we assume that she, when she was Mrs. Trump living in Manhattan, she probably, you know, hosted many events, and this is her sort of showcasing what she brings to the office of First Lady. I would say, or the position of First Lady, I would say that while this has been an amazing event, and it has been flawless, you're absolutely right about that, Laura, she's been doing this all along. I have been so impressed with this, not just her quiet dignity, as you brought up, but also just this diplomatic use of fashion. It's been brilliant when she went to Paris and to that restaurant at the Eiffel Tower. She was wearing red, white, and blue, a symbol of both of the flags. She wore that gorgeous black caftan with the gold white belt in Saudi Arabia. And of course, who can forget that amazing Asian-inspired gown that she wore in China with the pink fur sleeves? So she has been doing this all along. I have to say also, you're right, Jimmy Kimmel's been mean. So has the fashion industry. And bravo to Dolce & Gabbana, Carolina Herrera, those who have celebrated.
Talking about the way first ladies are treated.
But she hasn't really been a traditional first lady. She's been an absentee
What's wrong with
first
that?
lady.
What happened to being your own person?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think many Americans,
Except
many people feel sorry for her. We actually feel sorry for her because of her husband. I mean, she's going to start her anti-bullying campaign, and it seems like she's married to one of the biggest bullies in the country. So she's against the cyberbullying, and she's with a cyberbully. She is put down by Jimmy Kimmel, and meanwhile, her husband mocks people like Jimmy Kimmel. So we feel sorry for her.
Kathy, I think that's really condescending. I really like you. I think you're really fun. Why is it condescending? Because she has... No, let me finish. Because this drives me crazy about the way people treat Melania. She's made her own choice. She made her choice. Right. She married Donald Trump. I presume she loves her husband, and yet all these women who claim to be pro-choice and women should do what they want, any kind of arrangement for their marriages are good for them. It's all about free choice. But when a conservative woman makes a choice, you trash her or you say we feel sorry for her. And by the way, Melania also responded to the cyberbullying that she got over her cyberbullying initiative. Let's listen.